Hello, everyone. This is a random podcast of awesomeness. Today's podcast is brought to you by the letter C.
Yes, because my keyboard needs replaced and I'm too lazy to get into my closet to fix it.
Today, we are reviewing the game Metroid Prime Hunters, which is for the DS.
Yes, the oddball of the series as we continue to review oddballs of series. Why do we keep doing this? Because they're actually pretty interesting games most of the damn time.
And actually, this one was actually a lot of fun.
Yes.
I don't know how many of you out there listening actually have played any of the other Metroid Prime games, but this is actually a lot like the other ones.
Yes. And unlike the Bomberman game that we just reviewed, this one did not cause me to break my mouse or keyboard.
Now, as you start most of the Metroid games, you are Samus Aran, who is the bounty hunter of the universe.
Who's pretty much just an employee of the Galactic Federation.
Yes. And as usual, you start out with most of your items and then lose them and have to find them again.
Actually, you know what? I don't think we got through that plot point in here. I don't recall seeing us lose our items in this game.
Well, it's not quite the same as the other ones. You do get stuff in this one, though.
Yes. As is the case with a lot of the Castleroid games, as they have once been called, and then they were changed to Metroidvania after people realized that Super Metroid did it first, and Castlevania blatantly stole from it. But that's neither here nor there. Yes, you will traverse the galaxy attempting to obtain all of these new awesome weapons that will be used for spoilers.
Yes. And many spoilers there are.
Yes. All of them that you can acquire for your ship. No, different kind of spoilers.
Now, this game, I know a lot of people, especially like if you want to classify it, say this is actually a first-person shooter. I don't really qualify it for that. I say it's more of an adventure game.
Really? You don't qualify this as an FPS?
No, not really. Not compared to other FPSs.
I'm astounded by that because while playing through this, I definitely felt the FPS approach. Specifically because had we been able to do the competitive multiplayer, it pretty much would feel like an FPS because it's built.
Yeah, I do agree with that part. If we were able to do that, which this game was built to do, which we could not.
Yes, because once again, we don't have the ability to play with each other. We are lonely lost souls across the internet. And even Hamachi cannot connect us together.
So you're traveling through the universe.
In particular, the Alembic system.
And you discover a creature named Gorilla.
Hey, they don't find out about that particular monster until halfway through the game.
Well, yeah, that's going to be a big part of the game anyway.
Yes, finding the ultimate power. Story-wise, you, Samus Aran, have been contacted by the Galactic Federation in order to track down the rumored ultimate power, which is supposedly hidden deep within the confines of the Alembic system. However, this particular telepathic message that the Galactic Federation intercepts was broadcast at a particular frequency so that pretty much everyone in the universe knows it's there, including, but not limited to, the 5 other bounty hunters that may or may not work for the Galactic Federation. A lot of them have rather interesting backstories, but you won't be finding them or seeing them at all here.
Yeah.
You
do, however, see a few of those
I
in
like
other
Weevil.
games.
Weevil's probably the hardest of the bounty hunters to kill, at least
Yes.
IMO. Although, according to the multiplayer data that I did do research on, because I actually bothered to do research on the multiplayer data, Weevil is the worst character.
Good to know.
His damn alt form kills him. It's weird.
One of those sort of things. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So, the Galactic Federation calls out to you to go find the ultimate power and attempt to secure it for them, and destroy it if, destroy it if it cannot be secured. Which is their plotline for Fusion, in fact, as well. Even though you don't know that in Fusion. You see, I'm totally okay with spoiling other games, just not the game that we're currently reviewing.
Yes, I don't really want to spoil this one either because there's a lot to actually. If you're playing the game, there's a lot to find out.
Yes, much like the other Prime games, Samus is once again equipped with her scan visor, allowing her to scan particular objects in order to gain a lot of the background info about the areas that she's exploring. Most of this is actually just fluff text and doesn't have anything to do with anything, but it can be interesting if you're actually into the world building properties that it has. And that's pretty much where the story flat out dies until the last tenth of the game.
Which I actually do like about this series because you can tell that the game developers actually put a lot of thought into how they wrote everything up for each thing.
Yeah, although the pathways are pretty limited.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, the scan visor it activates certain objects as well.
Yes, mostly scanned buttons.
Yes.
And of course the teleport portals. Yes, new to the Prime universe, or at least this particular universe, whichever Prime universe this takes place in. Samus will, along her journey, be able to come across these ship deck portals, which will take her back to her starship. These are incredibly crucial and are in fact required for at least one area in the game, where you have to scan the button for it and then go back to your ship to use it in order to progress. I found that particular puzzle rather annoying on my first playthrough, but on my second, once I knew what I was doing, it was not so bad. Anyway,
if anyone is
reason
interested,
why you want to get back to Samus's gunship is because this is your save and heal point.
yes.
And you can only save while inside your ship. I found this to be actually rather distressing, given how I'm used to PC FPSs playing. In particular, like Quake 2 and Unreal, being able to freeform save anywhere. But that's just a personal bias that I have when it comes to, my superior PC gaming experience for this genre. Yes. I am very snooty about that.
So, the gameplay of this, you should definitely be playing this on a DS if you want to play it.
Yes, please do not suffer yourself through the horrors that we did. We played this on an emulator, and we regret doing this immediately. We do. Oh, God.
Not to say it's not impossible on an emulator.
No, it is definitely not impossible. I finally managed to actually beat it on my second run through this time around, simply because I didn't get the fucking game-breaking glitch that I had last time around. That wasn't to say that this time around I didn't have any game-breaking glitches. No, I still did, but they were positive game-breaking glitches this time.
What? Yeah. But yeah, Samus has, as she does in all of her games, she has the Morph Ball, which turns you into a ball, which allows you to access certain areas that you wouldn't otherwise.
Yes, and I find that the Morph Ball, unless it's specifically relegated, even though the Boost Ball is officially a native power for her, according to this canon, even though in the next game it's not. What the hell? I find that it's not actually useful for that much, other than where it's required. Even in the other Metroid games, including Super Metroid, which I can't finish, Zero Mission, which I did finish but can't 100%, and Fusion, which again I could finish but not 100%, I found myself using the Morph Ball more in those, even when it wasn't required, simply as a method of travel. Here, it is still in fact my method of travel, but it's not my preferred one. I prefer being up and running around, simply because I feel like I have a lot more defense and control that way. And you really do, despite, the horrors. Okay,
Now,
one of the big things that a lot of the gamers from Prime are going to be immediately wary of, where the hell are my space jump and screw attack? They moved over to Prime 3. Go back to there if you want them, because they're not here. A matter of fact, a lot of Samus's signature upgrades just simply are not here. You will never get the Varia suit, you will never get the Super Missile, and most depressing of all, despite it being a Prime Series game, Phase-On doesn't even come into the plot.
ooh. But yeah, there's a lot of things you don't get. But don't put
I
that
was
aside. This
seriously
is,
missing my poor spring ball. I wanted it.
but don't put that aside because there's still plenty of stuff in this game,
Yes, there are plenty of
such
things in this
as
game.
this. I'm trying to think of the name of it, like the spider suit,
Spider suit?
spider ball.
Spider ball isn't in here.
Oh wait, no, that's on the other one. Never mind. Never mind. I'm thinking of the other game.
Yeah, Metroid Prime 2 and 1 had the spider ball.
Yes, that's
Actually, I'm
right.
not even sure. Yeah, it was in 2. Johnny pissed about it for a while. But, yeah, the amount of upgrades that are in this game are actually far limited, and I want to blame the hardware for that, but I really don't think that I can realistically blame the hardware for that. I don't know why, but I really think that this was, the development team focusing so much more on the multiplayer experience rather than the single player one. It was quite clear that FPS games were, at this point, going almost strictly multiplayer and having tons and tons of success with it. The problem with this, as Johnny pointed out in his partial review, Metroid was never a multiplayer experience. They tried it with Echoes, and it bombed horribly. Absolutely horribly. Nobody even remembers that Echoes had multiplayer in it, specifically because nobody bothered to play it.
True.
And the multiplayer that is here is in fact the main focus. And I went on the GameFAQs board to see if anybody was still playing, and it does still have a following. I can't join them, nor would I want to, because every time that I go on the GameFAQs forums to actually look up on any particular character, well, actually, that's not true, because the only character I really looked up was Weevil. But everybody hates Weevil, and even the Weevil FAQ that's on GameFAQs says that Weevil is probably one of the least powerful characters, simply because he's got a lot of negs, and it takes way more experience with the other characters in order to know how to use them appropriately. This game definitely has balancing issues in the multiplayer, and believe it or not, it also has balancing issues in the single player. You wouldn't think that would be the case, but it is. Oh God,
Yeah.
it is. Before we actually get into my big neg for this game, because it's a big neg regardless of how you play this game, I want to briefly touch on a few of the FPS elements that ended up coming into this that were not here before. For the first time ever, because of the multiplayer focus, Samus has the ability to headshot and critical headshot specific enemies, in particular humanoids. This applies to all 5 of the other bounty hunters, as well as each of the spoiler enemies that you'll be fighting throughout the game. Matter of fact,
Yes.
even a few of the bosses have these weak spots on them. And a few of the mini bosses that you'll be fighting can only be damaged in those specific weak spots. And I'm glad to say that there are many bosses in here with specific weak spots that you have to target. Problem is, there's only 2. Whereas the main and a small, well, no, that goes into that probably goes into the next the actual big complaint that I got. But yeah. Shooting enemies in the head will actually cause a lot more damage, particularly to humanoid targets, but
Yes.
it feels wrong to have that in a Metroid game, even though it makes sense given the shift to multiplayer and the overall FPS feel.
Which I'm sure that's why they went with it in the first place, but it was just something extra that you didn't really need.
Right. Although it helps, it does.
It does.
Alright, so should we get into our major gripe with this game, at least when it comes to gameplay?
Sure, go ahead, Gerdat.
Okay, the control in this game is fucking bastardized, and you need to find another way to play this game. Oh God. For those of you unaware, and that should be most of you, since other than the dedicated multiplayer community, this game did not get played by pretty much anybody, Metroid Prime Hunters has got the worst FPS controls for an FPS ever conceived. Ever. Want to know why? The standard setup for this game requires you to have the L button as your trigger, the four directional buttons as your movement, not your turn, but your movement, and each of the 4 A, B, X, and Y buttons are jump keys. Well, how do you aim? Since it is a free aim shooter, you use the stylus, You use the stylus for pretty much nothing else in the game, and this becomes the source of all of the game's major shortcomings. Aside from one that I will get into directly after this.
Yes.
Because of how the control scheme is set up, especially with the stylus being your aim, you can't multitask in this game. You're either moving or you're aiming and shooting. You're almost never doing both. Or all three for that matter. Matter of fact, if anyone can actually do all three on an emulator, you have more button capabilities than I do, and please teach me your ways.
But yes, you're required to use the stylus in order to aim and shoot.
Well, not shoot, just aim.
Well, right.
Ooh. And if it was aim and shoot, that would be, it might actually feel a little bit better to me. There are multiple control settings, but I did not switch to any of them for fear that they would be somewhat worse. Yeah, I probably should have tested out the alternate control settings to see if I could make it, more comfortable for me. And then I realized shortly after noticing how horrible the goddamn control was, this game is piss easy.
Yeah, it's a pretty easy game after you get down how to.
Once you know how to actually control and move around, the game seems to know how horrible its control scheme is, and has dumbed down the difficulty of this series so much, that the single player is strictly a means of unlocking the multiplayer content. And it's really sad, actually. I remember dying several times, but not really because of the difficulty of the boss. More so, I didn't know what I was doing against the boss. Thankfully, the scan logs do help against the skelch, but the centipede tower, no, the centipede tower doesn't really help you that much. You figure it out on your own pretty quickly, assuming that you have the ability to recognize patterns and have cognitive senses and such, which you're supposed to be able to have. But this game is very, very easy. Almost to the point where I want to call it Kirby easy. And that is actually a pretty big insult to me, because I love the Kirby franchise, but dear God, other than Amazing Mirror, Kirby is fucking easy.
Yeah, for the most part.
And Amazing Mirror has just problems of its own.
Not only that, but I feel this game, compared to other Metroid games, is much more straightforward as in how to move in the game.
Which is, a definite problem for other people. For me, it's not actually that big of a problem, because I usually tend to play games with a storyline.
Right.
So, having a totally linear experience for me, that's cool by me. And even then, this is not totally linear.
No,
but it
not.
wants you to think it is. If you go through the game in the most linear fashion possible, this game will take you about, 5 hours. Or maybe anywhere between 5 and 7, I would say. Because when I finally cleared it today, it said that I had just under 5 hours of gameplay in. So
not bad.
It's not exactly a long or difficult game, which is actually a problem for me. But you can divert off the main path. Why you would want to, I'm still unsure. Other than, of course, the obvious. But if I divert off the path a little bit, I can try and make the Alanos cannon jump immediately after getting to Alanos the second time. No, because you have to go to Alanos the second time in order to get the Magmall, so you can actually complete Arcterra and Vesper.
Right. I mean, if you want to explore, go for it, but there's really no reason to.
Yeah, exploration has taken a huge downplay, and it's actually been in most of the Metroid series after Prime. Well, after Prime 1, in fact. Even Prime 2 didn't have that much exploration in it. So,
just a little bit, not much.
That about covers it for our gameplay woes. Because, well, there is one other thing that I want to bring up. As I mentioned before, you need to get to Alanos the second time in order to actually get the Magmall. Throughout the game, you'll be getting several different weapons. All of these weapons associate to the different bounty hunters. For example, Trace has got the Imperialist, which you'll get on the second visit to Arcterra. The first weapon that you'll get is the battle hammer, but you don't get it until, is it your first visit to Vesper?
I believe so.
Yeah, it's got to be your first visit to Vesper. And you're supposed to visit Vesper last of the 4 planets. There are, in fact, only 4 planets in this game, and they are nowhere near the size of SR-388 or Talon 4. Which is a good thing, by the way. They really shouldn't be that big.
No, they're decently sized.
They are decently sized, except for Vesper, which is so dinky.
Yeah.
So, Shadow, I know I asked you before that if you got to play any more of the game before we started the review, but how much did you actually play of this?
I actually got about to the very end, and that's where I stopped.
Really? So,
I mean,
did you
like,
make it all the way through the second visit to Vesper?
I did.
Okay, but you didn't actually go fight Big Boss.
Well, I did, but I didn't beat him the first time, so I figured that was good enough.
I had that issue too. I found that I ended up looking up a walkthrough to figure out how to get the secret ending. Not because I beat him the first time and got the crap ending. There are 2 different endings in this game. I'm spoiling that because it's kind of important in order to actually unlock all of the things.
It's something they do a lot in the Metroid series.
Yes. And in order to get the secret ending, you have to not do a specific sequence that allows you to fight the true final boss.
Spoilers.
Yes.
But yeah, overall the game's...
The game is actually fun, despite, and literally to spite, its horrible, horrible controls. I found myself enjoying my playthrough. Which was, really weird for me since I was loving the first, hour of Bomberman and then fuck no. Just fuck no.
I mean, unlike the Bomberman game, this game does remain fun as you play through it. Yes.
Despite it being way too easy. I found myself actually taking way longer on my second playthrough, in macro time as opposed to in-game time, simply because there isn't really a reason to play through the story mode a second time. There really isn't.
Not really. I mean, you already know what's happening.
Yes, not only do you know what all is happening, but assuming that you've been keeping up with your scanning, you already know the whole reason why they decided to banish the big boss in the first place.
Right.
And truth be told, once I figured out that I could potentially get health items during the big boss fight, I started trying to farm it, and then I realized this is taking too damn long. So I ended up farming health off of the boss himself. It was rather weird, actually. We've spent way too long on gameplay.
But yeah, this is a really good game.
It is a good game, and I want to stress that because the only 2 problems that are holding this game back are in fact the difficulty, which is way too low, and the learning curve for the controls, which is just no. You know those bell curves that are supposed to hold all possible equation solutions? This is not on there.
I do suggest if you do want to play this game, and I suggest that you do, if you do, to play it on the DS and not on an emulator.
Yes. Strictly because on the DS, it seems like on the DS it would be slightly easier to control, assuming you're sitting down. Do not play this game out in public. Don't. Of course, if you have a Nintendo DS and you're playing Metroid Prime Hunters, chances are you don't have much of a public to go out and play into.
I don't know, that's debatable. But anyway.
Yes, very. Graphically, it looks like Prime 1. A bit more a bit more pixelated in some areas, like the Psycho bits and such, but it's Prime 1. In all seriousness, it
almost feels like they ported it.
Not so much that they ported it, mind you, but that I think it's a little bit brighter and maybe a little bit more detailed here and there, but it looks like a Prime game, specifically Prime 1. With that being said, I do like the graphical aesthetics, and I can't really find anything to complain about in the graphic settings.
Nor can I.
See, I told you we spend way too damn long on gameplay. Alright, sound design. Actually, this is not really a complaint of mine, but it's more of a meh. I do like the few pieces of sound of the soundtrack that I noticed, but other than the Guardian and the Bounty Hunter battle themes, everything else is all atmospheric.
Which I think they do a good job of.
They do a good job of the atmospheric pieces, but the only one that I remember at all is Arctera, and I don't remember how it goes, just that it's actually there. I don't remember any of the atmospheric pieces from Alanos. Vesper, I don't think has any, which is actually kind of a problem. And Celestial Archives one atmospheric piece. I keep forgetting where it goes.
I mean, it's not that you would miss them too much if they were gone, but I feel that they really fit well with what's going on at the time.
Yes, they do fit well. Arctera's ambient soundtrack does definitely sound like you're on a cold ice planet. Mostly because you are on a cold ice planet with ice everywhere.
But yeah, overall, I mean, like, it's not really like an orchestra, but it is good for what it is.
Yes, it is good. I think I may have found the boss music to be rather repetitive, but that's the only piece of music that I can really complain about, and I think the only reason why is because I end up taking so damn long on the Skelch fights. Yeah, that's just me.
Yeah.
Multiplayer. Didn't play, shouldn't really critique. I'm gonna try and critique anyway. The fact that Weevil is one of the least balanced in the wrong way characters is, well, least balanced is always in the wrong direction, but whatever. Makes me sad, and I didn't actually research enough of the characters to really comment on them, except for Noxus, Noxus and Silex apparently are the two most abusable strategies. And personally, if you want my opinion, play as Noxus. Simply because Noxus's freeze is way more devastating than any of the other status effects.
But yeah.
Oh, come on. Surely you can just conjecture some opinions up about the multiplayer you didn't play.
Well, I wish I could. I wish I could have actually played it just to give a more sense of it. I think it might be fun to play it. I don't know how fun, but it does have the potential to...
I don't think that I'd have fun playing this simply because the controls on an emulator are just...
yeah, maybe not on an emulator, but...
I'd have to get reacquainted with the control scheme on a DS in order to actually, say that I could have fun with this. And even then, I'm not entirely sure if I could.
I mean, I'd like to say something about the actual multiplayer, but until we actually get to play it, I don't have too much to say about it.
Alright then. So, are we really up to our final thoughts?
I think we are.
We spent 20 minutes on gameplay. Couldn't even bother to go into details over our opinions. Alright. You go first, Shadow.
Okay then. I actually did like this game. Gerdat's the one who picked it out.
Yay!
He actually asked me between which games to play, and this was the one I thought we should do, and I'm glad that we did do this one. It was a lot of fun, despite the difficulties with the controls, which I took a while to get used to.
I'm still not actually used to them. The final boss fight didn't really accentuate how bad the control scheme was, but it definitely felt like it tried to.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still not perfect at it, but whatever. I pretty much beat the game anyway. I liked the graphics. I thought they did a really good job of getting that Metroid Prime feel on the DS, which I don't think they did as well with, like, say, Metroid Fusion.
Well, Fusion wasn't supposed to be a Prime game.
Oh, I know. But I'm saying in general. Even though Fusion actually does have the ability to connect with Prime for an extra thing. I forget what it was exactly.
It is a bonus costume. You get the
Yes,
Fusion
yes,
suit.
that's right. I think it's a pretty good game, and I I don't know if I'd want to play it again, but I really did enjoy the experience of playing it. So, if I were to rate this game, I'd probably give it an 8 out of 10.
That's much higher than what I'm going to give it, mind you, but I do respect your opinion, Shadow. You tend to be a lot softer on games than I am, though.
I was debating between a 7 and an 8.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Perhaps a 7.5.
We don't really want to introduce decimals again, do we?
So I'll go with a 7.
I shouldn't influence your opinion that much. Now I'm just bitching to bitch, but alright. I like this game. I actually do. I find that it's actually pretty fun to play through. The first time. I see no reason to go back and try and get all the scan logs. Specifically because I don't know how many I missed, and I don't really care that I missed that many. I did learn enough about the Olympic system to actually know almost exactly what the hell is going on, and why we're so afraid of this particular threat. The only real problems that I have are with the difficulty in the controls, and I've harped on that already too fucking much. If you can get around the controls, this is actually a very fun game to play. So I'm going to give this game a 7. I wanted to give it a 6, but then of course I negged the Shadows rating too hard. Yeah. But yes, I'm going to give this game a 7 because even though I see no real value in replaying this game, and I have a bit too much of difficulty with the controls, there's definitely a very well-crafted game in here. And it was very fun to play while I was playing it. It didn't piss me off for whatever reason. Because seriously, the control scheme is that bad, folks. It really is. But if you can get around that, this is definitely something that I'd recommend you go out and play. Like maybe rent it for your DS, because you can rent DS games. I have a library. I know my news.
Gamefly.
I don't actually have GameFly. I don't think I'm ever gonna get it.
Probably not me either.
But yeah, that I think concludes up our thoughts on Metroid Prime Hunters. A good game, marred so horribly by the control scheme.
You never know. Maybe they'll remake it for the 3DS and use the analog stick, and it might actually make more sense.
This really should have been a twin stick shooter. It should have.
It should have been. It would make more sense.
It would have made way more sense. All the other Prime games were twin stick shooters, well, when they could do it that way.
Right.
So, yeah. 7 out of 10 from the both of us. We like the game. Just please force yourself through the controls and rent this, because this is a good game. And if you can get some fun out of the multiplayer, let us know. Because we like your comments, even if you're, raging at me for no reason that I can't duel. Seriously. Hey. Alright, guys. I think that's going to end this off for the day. Any other thoughts, Mr. Shadow?
That's about it. Thanks for watching, guys. Well, listening anyway.
They might be watching. I'm not sure.
Not that they're going to see much, but yeah.
Hey, I might do something.
Okay, well, I guess we'll see what happens. So yeah, thanks for listening, guys, and we hope to see you back next time for our next review.
Yes, which will be something else that Shadow will actually pick.
Yes.
Alright, guys, be safe and have a good night.